Good afternoon, everybody. On this Tuesday, October 28th, 2025, I got all of your stories for your rush hour ride home. Now, you know us, the cornucopia of content, from pop culture to politics, a little bit of everything in between. We have a lot to jump into. On the second half of today's episode, we'll discuss Candace Owens, the bombshell text messages she reveals between her and Charlie Kirk. Some people are calling it fraudulent. I believe they're real. We'll discuss those. But in the first half of today's episode here, we're going to talk about Tyler Robinson. He is the man alleged to be the shooter in the Charlie Kirk death. He, of course, is getting a fair trial and has now received a big legal victory. You might not think it's big, but it actually could be. I'll explain what that is. That'll be our first story. Then we'll talk about Gavin Newsom clapping back at Joe Rogan. I love to see this. Rogan's had Gavin Newsom in his mouth. A lot of trash talk by Joe Rogan, and Gavin says, "Come on, bro, why won't you just have me on?" So I'll share that clip. Pretty funny stuff. Calls Joe Rogan the Facebook of podcasting. What a burn. You got to love it. Then some Dancing with the Stars updates. And a big day in sports last night as the Dodgers secured a huge walk-off win in the 18th inning. Freddie Freeman hits a home run. They're up 2-1 in the World Series. Dodgers versus Blue Jays. Trump says neither squad is going to get to visit the ballroom, which of course isn't finished. Although, you know, with the speed at which they're building this ballroom, if they could just turn the lights on in the government too, wouldn't that be nice? But what are we, just trying to help out, people that need food stamps? Oh geez, how dare you, you soy boy? We can't even buy soy. All right. Anyhow, so I got those updates. All of it starts right now on The Rush. So here it is. The Charlie Kirk murder suspect, Tyler Robinson, scores a legal win. I'm going to share this Zoom recording. The 22-year-old who prosecutors say murdered Charlie Kirk scored this. They say it's a small legal victory, but a win is a win here. The judge in his murder case ruled in favor of Robinson's motion to wear street clothes at the trial. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, if you're going to be, judged by a jury, there's a little difference for, dressed up like you're a Gap model versus wearing the jumpsuit. So these little details matter. Here is a clip of the motion. Have a listen.
Motion to appear in civilian clothing and without physical restraints. The parties agree that during trial, a defendant has a right to appear in civilian clothing and that any restraints must be concealed from the jury.
I mean, it's true. Look, if you're wearing shackles and you show up in black and white stripes with the prison hat, you just look guilty no matter who you are. So yeah, clean the kid up, give him a fair trial. That's the country I want to live in.
Mr. Robinson now seeks to extend those rights to all pretrial proceedings. The court considered each request separately. In relation to request to appear in civilian clothing, Mr. Robinson asks to appear in civilian clothing at all pretrial hearings. He argues that the extensive media coverage of this case creates a real risk of prejudice if the public and potential jurors repeatedly see him in jail attire. The state, the sheriff's department, and the court security director opposed the request, arguing that jail clothing assists with safety and identification. The court has balanced these competing concerns. The case has attracted extraordinary public and media attention. Images of Mr. Robinson in jail clothing are likely to circulate widely and influence prospective jurors.
Boy, what a dumb argument by the prosecutors. Oh, if he doesn't have prison garb on, he's just going to be able to walk out of the courtroom as if this isn't the biggest trial in the world or one of the biggest trials in the world. Yeah, I'm not the judge here, but I'm just overruled. You know what I mean?
Given the scale of that publicity, the risk of prejudice is significant. The court finds that Mr. Robinson's right to the presumption of innocence outweighs the minimal inconvenience of permitting civilian attire, and Mr. Robinson shall be dressed as one who is presumed innocent.
Can we get a motion to get a sponsor? Now, again, I don't mean to make light of this situation, but, this is going to be such a televised, or if it's not televised, there'll be photo circulating. So it's like, will there be brand, which are the approved brands that you would wear? My guess is you want something not too flashy. You want something conservative, casual, maybe a button up with a sweater vest. I have no idea. You know what I mean? But you don't want to look like me. You need to clean it up for the court. Now, I got to say, all due respect, this judge seems to be knocking it out of the park. sometimes you hear these judges speak, and they kind of sound like they want that main character energy. But from what we've already reported on him, he wants this thing to be as fair as possible. Because look, whether Tyler Robinson did it or not, you want the public to believe that justice was served. Now, I'm going to share what Candace Owens said on the second video that we covered today with regards to her believing that close friends of Charlie Kirk betrayed him. And there's just a lot of conspiracies that are circulating. I think it's fair to have these conspiracies. There's people that say there's no way the bullet that they accused Tyler Robinson of using in the rifle, there's no way that was used because they never recovered the full bullet, only fragments. Why were they deconstructing the camera footage right away after this happened? There's so many questions about flights that left. Candace Owens, was talking about the Egyptian, I believe, or was it a Qatari, whatever it was, a Middle Eastern flight took off. I think it was an Egyptian military flight, but bizarre stuff to say the least. And this court case is already going to bring about every conspiracy imaginable, but also there's a lot of lack of trust with the government, as they've literally been known to go after people, as we were seeing with Albrego Garcia, this guy that they tried to deport and really put into a prison in another country, all because they accused him of being MS-13. He didn't receive his due process. And now we have whistleblowers, a Department of Justice prosecutor who's saying they said pin him to MS-13, and the prosecutor was fired because he wasn't willing to violate the man's due process. So we need to double down in doing it the right way. This is why we shouldn't be blowing up boats in Venezuela, even if they say cocaine on the side of the boat. You need due process. Even if they say they found Tyler Robinson, he's guilty as hell, well, then he should be able to get a fair trial in court, and you should be able to prove it. But between the text messages that came out that were so bizarre, this immediate mission that it seemed by the government to politicize the killer as a far left-leaning lunatic, it's like, I'm glad we have a judge here who's slowing it down, making this as boring as possible, and putting the guy in street clothes.
Accordingly, the defendant's request to appear in civilian clothing for all pretrial proceedings is granted. In conclusion, the court orders as follows. Defendant's motion to strike the sheriff's response is granted. Defendant's motion to appear in civilian clothing is granted. Defendant's motion to appear without restraints is denied.
All right, so we're going to cuff him up? Okay, I don't know. I mean, maybe put the shackles on the ankles. It's like the guy, it's like, all right, look, there's bailiffs there. It's going to be safe. It's going to be fine, all right? We're going to get down to the truth of all of this. All right, so I've actually here's coming up next, I got this Gavin Newsom clip. It's hilarious. You need to stick around for it. Take a quick break. When we come back, Gavin Newsom calls out Joe Rogan. Well, here it is. Gavin Newsom calls Joe Rogan the Facebook of podcasting. Let's listen to this clip. Shots fired.
For years and years, he's been attacking me, and it's one way, and he won't have me on. He's consistently not having me on. By the way, I'm moving on. I have no interest.
You're done with him?
Joe Rogan's the Facebook of podcasting. He was sitting across one of the brightest minds in podcasting right now. The guy was in the mic. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people at the mic doing extraordinary things in podcasting.
Joe Rogan's got a pretty big audience still, though.
You know what? But with all due respect, if he has a big audience but he doesn't have big enough confidence, I didn't go there, to have me on.
Well, you've called him a chicken.
He's been attacking.
So Gavin Newsom says Joe Rogan's confidence levels are not big enough, referring to his balls. That's what he was going to say. He doesn't have the balls to have him on. And look, Gavin Newsom says that about Joe Rogan. And you know what? Call him out. Joe Rogan, as Gavin Newsom says, he's got California derangement syndrome. Look, there's a lot of things that are flawed with California. Did they get the initial pandemic response wrong by, arresting people that were surfing on the beach? Yeah, but does every one of those issues go, do you blame the governor for every single one of them? There's county rules, there's city laws, it's a little bit more complicated than just Gavin Newsom bad. I mean, California is the fourth largest economy in the world. I moved away from there because I couldn't afford to buy a home. That's facts. There are issues with California, absolutely. But Southern California is a beautiful, very large state. There's a lot of good things there. And it's not a whole bunch of blue-haired liberals running around. It's a very diverse political climate there, even though the majority is Democrat. So I say all this to say, Gavin Newsom's calling Joe Rogan out for getting it wrong. Joe Rogan's friend, Sean Ryan, had Gavin Newsom on They talked for 4 hours, and I think it's good when that happens because you realize we all have a lot more in common than we have apart. And a podcast the size of Joe Rogan's would benefit from not just talking shit about the governor, but actually having him on to discuss some of these complicated issues.
But here's the thing. These guys, they all have something in common. It's one way. They attack, they belittle, they demean, they take things out of context. But this is a serious thing.
Yeah.
And so often we just sit back and go, oh, God, I really would love to go on. Oh, if Kamala Harris just went on Joe Rogan, she would have won. It's not. It's so much deeper than that. And the unwillingness for a guy like that to even have the common courtesy to attack someone and not have the decency say, you know what, why don't you have a chance to come on? Let's have a civil dialogue. I've watched you on podcasts with like Sean Ryan, who's a close buddy of his. He had the courage on me have 4 hours.
Right.
Sean Hannity, folks like that. And so if I can go on Sean Ryan and Sean Hannity, what are you worried about? Joe, you're going to cook me, or I'm going to cook myself.
There it is. You're going to cook me, Joe. Well, we'll love to see if Joe wants to go into the kitchen. So, yeah, it's interesting. Sean Ryan's got a massive podcast adjacent to Joe Rogan's, has the courtesy of having Gavin Newsom on for 4 hours. Believe it or not, they agreed on a lot of things. And, Gavin Newsom admitted to the things he got wrong. And Gavin Newsom, he might be the front runner running as president for the running for president in the Democratic Party. These conversations aren't going away. What's interesting though is Kamala Harris should have gone on Joe Rogan. She should have done everything under the sun to try to go on his show, and she didn't. And it certainly didn't help her out, that's for sure. And I don't care what sort of campaign events you have in these other counties. You clear your schedule to go on the biggest podcast in the world. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom's saying, "Hello, I'm here," and Joe's like, I don't think so. So Joe's chicken. He's chicken. Have on Gavin Newsom. Whether you agree with his policies or not, have that conversation like a man, right? All right, big news coming out of the Justice for Clayton community here. Today is Laura Owens' former attorney, David Gingras. He's got his DUI case, so we'll be covering what the hell goes on with it. He tried to extend his case here. He was caught, I guess, driving under the influence, according to Scottsdale police. But now they're saying that they think he's going to try to get out of his DUI. It's been bugging me that he came back to do one video. Sure, he loves attention, but it felt more premeditated to me. So he has been postponing his DUI case. I think he was waiting to find and get the diagnosis he needed to get out of it. What is the diagnosis, in my opinion? An eye condition called nystagmus, the very condition alcohol and drugs cause in the eyes, the condition police test for during DUI investigations. I then read his stupid blog over the weekend. Lo and behold, he's blogging about a recent medical condition he was experiencing. Why blog about an illness? This is too long, so please read the two paragraphs from his blog that explain it all, in my opinion. So people think he's going to try to get out of the DUI today by faking a new illness. This is what he said on his blog. The other day I posted a YouTube video, which was the first one I've done in months. Watching the video back, I noticed my eyes were twitching noticeably. I knew this wasn't a result of cocaine use or any other illegal drug, since I don't do illegal drugs. So what was it? I decided to call my doctor and find out, and guess what it was? Something I had never heard of, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, or BPPV, among other things, like a spinning, dizzy head. One symptom is weird, jerky eye movements called nystagmus. Well, there it is. Case closed. So he's going to try to say he wasn't drunk. He just had an eye stigma issue. We'll have to see if that holds up in court. Justice for Clayton said, guys, Gingras is cooked. His little fake disorder is not going to work for him. Bro is going to jail like his client Laura Owens. So we'll have to see. Again, this is the man who tried to make us homeless, said by this time this year we would be homeless and Laura's horses would be grazing on our property. Again, we know that to be the opposite. She's charged with 7 felonies, and I have to make travel plans to try to see her get denied in court. You know what I mean? Because, I canceled my HBO, so I'm a little light on content these days. I might as well go watch these court cases play out. Boy, where do we even go from there? From one DUI to another. Paul Pierce charged with a DUI. I was discussing this last week because he posted saying he just fell asleep at the wheel because he's old. And of course, I'm like, I understand. You're waiting in traffic. Your eyelids get a little heavy. Maybe it's from a stigma. Next thing you know, you're getting arrested. Well, they're saying now that the results came in, and he had a 0.08 blood alcohol content. Blood alcohol content 0.08. Now, 0.08 is illegal. 0.0799 would be the legal level you're allowed. A couple drinks. Someone his size, he's probably 6'5", 250, big guy, probably more than a couple drinks. So I'd like to see the third decibel place. They say 0.08, but can we get a little bit more specific there? I know lawyers tell you not to even take the blood alcohol test because it's faulty or whatever. But again, we'll have to see. But again, is it worse to drive 0.2 versus 0.08? Yes, it's bad. You shouldn't be driving with any amount of alcohol in your body, but 0.08 is the threshold where it's no longer legal. But anyway, that's your update there. And then final content for the first half of the episode. Travis Kelce keeps it 100 after scoring a touchdown, hits Taylor's Fate of Ophelia dance. So here he is. If you weren't obnoxious already by this happy engaged couple, when the man scores a touchdown and he's going to get married to Taylor Swift, he does a dance move to her latest album. I got to tell you, and just as a side note, someone who considers himself a fan of Taylor Swift but not a Swiftie, the more you watch her new album, there's a lot of good music on there. Now, as far as the redwood tree reference, that'll be the best dance move, is if he scores a touchdown and just does some pointing to his redwood, as just in honor of her song, Knock on Wood. All right, Dancing with the Stars is tonight. Dylan Efron broke his nose, younger brother of Zac Efron, broke his nose dancing. You hate to see an injury, but he's apparently going to be okay for tonight.
Hey Dylan, how are you? How's the nose healing up? How did it happen?
It was just an accident.
Oh, it's just an accident? I wanted to ask, who's a better dancer, you or Zach?
All right, no response there. Pay some respect to TMZ. So the nose is better. Nose goes. And they're going to have those updates. We'll have updates on Dancing with the Stars. Big fan of Dancing with the Stars, of course. Team Robert Irwin over here. But they're all just crushing it. It's a really good season. All right, coming up next, we got Candace Owens. She's revealing more private text messages with Charlie Kirk. It's leaving some people upset. She's going to defend herself. That story coming next.